How smartphones destroyed the $5 billion GPS device market. Picture this. It's 2007 and you're planning a road trip across the country. You walk into Best Buy and drop $300 on a chunky Garmin GPS device that takes 5 minutes to acquire a satellite signal and speaks directions in a robotic voice that sounds like it learned English from a calculator. Fast forward to 2015, and that same device is gathering dust in your junk drawer while your smartphone provides turn-by-turn navigation for free, complete with real-time traffic updates, restaurant reviews, and the ability to reroute you around accidents before you even know they happened. This is the story of how smartphones didn't just compete with the GPS industry. They obliterated it so completely that even the market leader Garmin watched helplessly as their billion-dollar empire crumbled in less than a decade. The GPS device market in 2007 was an absolute goldmine, generating over $5 billion annually and growing at a staggering 25% year over year. Garmin dominated this landscape with a 60% market share, selling over 10 million units annually at premium prices that ranged from $200 to $600 per device. These weren't just gadgets, they were essential tools that transformed how people navigated the world. Before GPS devices, drivers relied on paper maps, printed MapQuest directions, or pure luck to find their destinations. Garmin had perfected the formula: ruggedized hardware, reliable satellite connectivity, and comprehensive mapping data that covered every street in North America and Europe. Their devices were status symbols, mounted prominently on dashboards like digital badges of technological sophistication. The company's stock price reflected this dominance, soaring from $30 in 2003 to over $100 by 2007, making millionaires out of early investors who recognized the revolutionary potential of putting satellite navigation in every car. Then came January 9, 2007, the day Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone and unknowingly signed Garmin's death warrant. The original iPhone didn't even have GPS capability. It relied on cell tower triangulation and Wi-Fi positioning for basic location services. But Jobs had planted a seed that would grow into Garmin's worst nightmare: the concept of a single device that could replace multiple gadgets. While Garmin executives initially dismissed the iPhone as an expensive toy for tech enthusiasts, they failed to recognize the existential threat hiding in plain sight. The iPhone represented a fundamentally different approach to technology. Instead of buying separate devices for music, communication, internet, and navigation, consumers could carry one device that did everything. This convergence principle would prove lethal to single-purpose devices across multiple industries, but GPS manufacturers were particularly vulnerable because navigation was becoming a commodity feature rather than a specialized function requiring dedicated hardware. The first real warning shot came in 2008 when Google launched Google Maps for mobile devices, initially as a basic mapping service that seemed primitive compared to dedicated GPS units. Garmin's leadership dismissed it as inadequate. After all, it required a data connection, the maps weren't stored locally, and the interface was clearly designed for occasional use rather than serious navigation. They were technically correct about these limitations, but they missed the bigger picture entirely. Google wasn't trying to build a better GPS device. They were reimagining navigation as a service rather than a product. While Garmin charged hundreds of dollars upfront and additional fees for map updates, Google offered their mapping service completely free, subsidized by advertising revenue and the valuable location data they collected from users. This fundamental business model difference would prove insurmountable because Google could continuously improve their service and add new features without requiring consumers to purchase new hardware. The beginning of the end arrived in 2009 when Google introduced free turn-by-turn navigation on Android devices, followed by the same feature on iPhone in 2012. Suddenly, smartphones weren't just displaying maps. They were providing full GPS functionality that matched or exceeded dedicated devices in most scenarios. The user experience transformation was remarkable. Instead of typing addresses into a tiny keyboard on a 4-inch screen, users could simply speak their destination or select it from their contacts. Rather than waiting for satellite acquisition in a cold car, navigation was ready instantly using assisted GPS that combined satellite data with cellular and Wi-Fi positioning. Most importantly, smartphone navigation was always connected to the internet, providing real-time traffic updates, accident reports, road closures, and dynamic rerouting that made traditional GPS devices look prehistoric by comparison. Google's traffic data came from millions of Android users anonymously sharing their location and speed, creating a crowdsourced traffic monitoring system that no traditional GPS manufacturer could match. The smartphone advantage extended far beyond basic navigation into integrated services that created an entirely superior user experience. When smartphone users searched for restaurants, gas stations, or hotels, they didn't just get addresses, they got real-time reviews, photos, hours of operation, phone numbers for direct calling, and often the ability to make reservations or check availability. Yelp integration meant drivers could see that the McDonald's at the next exit had a 1-star rating due to consistently broken ice cream machines, while the local diner 2 miles further had 4.5 stars and was famous for homemade pie. Google Street View allowed users to preview their destination and identify landmarks that made arrival easier, while integration with contact lists meant navigating to friends' houses required just a few taps rather than manually entering addresses. Perhaps most crucially, smartphone navigation updated automatically and continuously. New roads appeared within days of opening, business closures were reflected in real time, and traffic patterns were constantly refined based on aggregated user data. Garmin's attempts to compete revealed just how fundamentally the game had changed, and how poorly positioned traditional GPS manufacturers were to adapt. In 2010, they launched the Nuva phone, a smartphone designed to combine their navigation expertise with communication features, priced at $600 when the iPhone 3GS cost $200 with a contract. The device was a spectacular failure, selling fewer than 50,000 units because it tried to compete on hardware while the real battle was happening in software and services. Garmin's navigation software was technically proficient, but felt dated compared to the sleek, intuitive interfaces that smartphone users expected. Their maps were accurate but static, updated only when users purchased annual subscriptions for $60 or more, while Google Maps improved constantly at no charge. Most tellingly, Garmin's traffic data came from expensive partnerships with traditional traffic monitoring services, while Google's crowdsourced approach provided more comprehensive and timely information by leveraging their massive user base. The market collapse was swift and merciless, demonstrating how quickly established industries can disintegrate when faced with superior alternatives. Garmin's automotive GPS revenue peaked at $2.8 billion in 2008, then plummeted to just $400 million by 2015, an 85% decline in 7 years. The company's stock price reflected this devastation, falling from over $100 in 2007 to below $30 by 2012, wiping out billions in shareholder value. Industry-wide statistics were equally brutal. Total GPS device sales dropped from 15 million units in 2008 to fewer than 3 million units in 2015, while average selling prices collapsed as retailers desperately tried to move inventory of devices that consumers increasingly viewed as obsolete. Best Buy reduced their GPS display space by 75% between 2010 and 2014, eventually relegating remaining devices to end caps and clearance sections. The used GPS device market virtually disappeared because the hardware had no residual value. Why buy a 3-year-old Garmin for $50 when your existing smartphone provided superior navigation for free? The broader implications of this industry killshot extended far beyond GPS devices into a cautionary tale about technological disruption and the dangerous illusion of competitive moats. Garmin had believed their advantages were sustainable: superior hardware design, extensive mapping partnerships, brand recognition among consumers, and retail relationships built over decades. They failed to recognize that smartphones weren't just alternative products. They represented a completely different technological paradigm where software and services mattered more than hardware specifications. The lesson became a business school case study in disruption theory. When your core product becomes a feature of someone else's platform, your industry is doomed unless you can successfully pivot to an adjacent market. Some GPS manufacturers like TomTom attempted to survive by licensing their mapping data to smartphone manufacturers, but this transformed them from profitable hardware companies into low-margin service providers competing against Google's vast resources. Today, Garmin exists as a shadow of its former dominance, having successfully pivoted to specialized markets like aviation, marine navigation, and fitness tracking, where smartphones still face limitations. Their automotive GPS business generates less than 15% of company revenue, compared to over 70% at their peak, and serves primarily commercial fleets and consumers in areas with poor cellular coverage. The company's survival strategy focused on applications where dedicated hardware still provides advantages. Pilots need certified aviation GPS systems that meet federal regulations. Sailors require devices that function reliably in harsh marine environments, and serious athletes want fitness trackers with multi-day battery life and specialized sensors. Meanwhile, the navigation features that once justified $300 GPS devices are now standard on every smartphone, tablet, and increasingly even in smartwatches, demonstrating how completely smartphones absorbed and improved upon the core value proposition of dedicated GPS hardware. The $5 billion GPS device market didn't gradually decline. It was systematically dismantled by a superior technological approach that made standalone navigation devices as obsolete as paper maps, leaving behind only specialized niches where general-purpose smartphones cannot yet compete effectively.